Getting away from people and events is a thought that fits with some Stoic ideas of Stoicism, and ancient Greek philosophy teaches people how to develop mental peace by accepting what is, what they can't change, and paying attention to what they can change in. In this lesson, we'll look at the lessons of Stoicism and looking at how this concept can be used for the step-by-step instructions for detaching from things and people. One step away, stay calm from that person. For a while, shows us how important it is to keep within our inner peace, no matter outside of that case. The first step in to separate from someone means to move away from them. Right now, this isn't a sign of not to avoid, but as a way to gain perspective and keep our feelings in check from making our decisions less clear, Stoic. The scholar Cicero wrote to Lucilius, stressed the need to take a break. To figure out who you are better, he wrote, take as much time as you can to be alone. Spend time with people who are likely to better you. Welcome those who are able to make the process better is a two men learn from each other as they teach. This means taking a short break to think about what's going on, and your Stoicism teaches how to deal with your feelings. That our responses are inside our control, and when we step back, we make the room to pick how to answer. Let yourself have the alone time to think about your thoughts and feelings. Take this time to think about what's going on. Objectively, rather than right away, effective feelings on Seneca's words. Share the Stoic view that being aware of yourself is the first step toward having control over your feelings. Imagine everything is busy in the city where you are. Stoicism that is loud and disorderly is all around you. Points out that when dealing with tough thoughts or a situation that isn't clear, adding someone to the mix, it's a good idea to take a short break. Getting somewhere quiet in the middle of the city to take a break and think of, in this break, you can press the stop button. It's not about staying away from the problem. It's not so much about giving yourself a chance to think without being interrupted by. The Stoic was filled with feelings. Philosophers are the old wise guys. Talked a lot about where to get some peace and quiet inside each of us. One of those once upon a time, smart people said. It's like giving yourself as much as you can, taking a step back to see things better. To put it simply, it's like when you take a break in a game. You don't leave the game for good. Just take a break for taking a moment to clear your mind teaches us that how we feel is they come and go like the weather. By taking a break, you're giving yourself a chance to let the storm in your mind go calm down, which will make it easier to figure out what to do next. And keep this step in mind. Isn't about running away, but to find a quiet place. Press pause. Stuck in the middle of life's noise, urges taking a step back, because it thinks that when things get tough, feelings can be like a storm. It makes us less smart by taking a little we can take a break and wait for the storm to pass. The conservative idea is to make things more clear, that we can make in this quiet place, made based on reason instead of just how we're feeling at that moment. Find a place or time to be alone and quiet, like going for a short walk while sitting in a park or just by yourself in your room. The important thing is to make some room for yourself, a place to think without. Keep in mind that it's not about fleeing for good, it's about making some peace and quiet to figure things out, too. Think about whether you should stay away from yourself is the second step in letting go. From people needs a careful taking into account. Whether distance is a choice, Stoicism is a smart and moral choice. Helps us make sure our acts are in line with reason and virtue, putting the search for eudaimonia, or happiness. Moral excellence is the idea behind the Sto, that of oasis, the idea of taking something. Being comfortable with something means that the normal tendency is to be good. And there is social unity, but not all building connections is good for what the Stoics like about our moral growth. Epictetus told us to think about we can't choose wisely or join groups. We can choose our outside conditions, but we always get to choose how to deal with them. Think about the nature of your being close to the person in question. Are they good for your morals, personal growth, and happiness? Stoicism teaches that staying away from harmful or having bad relationships is not a sign of weakness, but of knowledge. The Stoic scholar Epicus wrote about virtue and being born. A slave showed this to teaching by putting a focus on inner freedom no matter what, outside limits. Imagine that you're hanging out with friends and one of them do things that make you feel bad about yourself. A lot of Stoicism says that, just like, when you pick good friends, you should think it's a good idea to keep getting together with this person in daily language. It's like, think about whether being around this someone who is happy and helps me grow, or what does it mean for the story? This is what thinkers call thinking. About whether it's a smart thing to do, Stoicism picks things that make us unique, better people, which is what this is all about. Check to see if the person you're taking care of is making your life better, or even tougher. The Stoics think that having good friends is like having sunshine, our souls making us better. Different versions of ourselves. Picture your friend is like a plant that needs water. It gets bigger and better, but it might not work as well if you don't. Think about whether the people around you are like water to your plant, or even more, it feels like a storm is coming. Someone like sunshine. That's great if not. Socrates says it might be a good idea to think about making the little space. Don't forget that it's not about being mean or keeping problems at bay, is about pick things that are good for your heart. And Stoicism is all about keeping your cool, making life a little better, and that comes with the people we pick to be around. 3. Talk to someone. You depend on Stoicism. Even though it's focused on being disciplined and strong inside, does not encourage isolating people, are social animals, and looking for help and advice from people you can trust. People are an important part of the stern way. In the third step of taking a serious view, helps us to communicate in an open and honest way. This fits with someone we depend on. What the Stoics thought about the philosophical make friends with someone you can share things with. The things that you think, fear, and fight with. He wrote a lot about in his letters how important friendship is and what part it plays in our search for virtue. He said that the best thing that can be given to a man, the next to that, of good sense and a calm personality, that of a friendly associate, a man. He can look at it like a mirror. Feel free to share your feelings and thoughts with someone you can trust, someone who embodies the Stoic ideas about what is right and good. What we talk about isn't just a way to let off steam, but also as a chance to learn something useful and points of view that Stoicism teaches. By letting others in, we get stronger. Our social ties and help people feel like they neighborhood important parts of the path to detachment and Stoicism. This means that when you're working with bad thoughts or a situation that's not clear, to talk to someone can be very helpful. A person you trust. Picture this person as your smart game partner who can give you Stoicism is a big part of the idea of good tips, that we don't have to deal with everything by themselves like superheroes do. As Sidekicks puts it, we should have someone we can talk to about what the Stoic thought and felt. Philosophers think that going through tough times with a friend is like a secret tool to deal with the problems think of someone you can trust, like a family member, friend, or even you have to choose your game teacher. Friend, when things get tough, share what's going on with them. It might be in person on the phone or even through send texts that make you feel good. Remember, you aren't putting a load on them, you are sharing. Shined and looked like a good game partner. They could give you ideas, or there are points of view you haven't considered. Stoicism teaches us that when we face problems, being with a friend can make the trip with a lot less bumps. Set boundaries for how you feel. The Stoic thought puts a lot of weight on a focus on learning and running or feelings instead of ignoring them. Stoicism tells us to deal with our thoughts. Please notice and thank them while using logic to keep power. In the Stoicism is the fourth step of detachment. Shows us how to set limits for This doesn't mean we're becoming not caring or interested, but rather controlling the level of energy and how long our emotional reactions last. The Stoic idea of abatha is often misunderstanding as full emotional. To be detached is to be in a state of peace that comes from controlling one's effects on emotions. Epicus, a strong Stoic philosopher, put it this way: idea by saying, we have the power to stop the emotions from acting, or at not least to fight our urges. Think about the Stoic practice of bad vision, in which one thinks possible problems and costs to get your mind ready for them by setting limits for our emotions. We can deal with things in a controlled way and a fair view, preventing emotions from taking over reason. Picture your thoughts as bright colors. There are blocks, and sometimes they pile up. Turn into a big tower of Stoicism tells us that we should set some rules about how tall your tower of feelings come and go. To put it more simply, when your Stoicism tells us it's okay to deal with tough things. I understand how you feel, but it's also smart to make sure they don't get too tall. Shake everything up. Stoicism says that our emotions are kind of like those bright blocks. They can be fun, but too many of them. Things could go wrong. For the Stoic philosophers talked about how to find a balance is like building a tower that's tall enough to be interesting, but not too tall. It's not so tall that it falls over. How you feel is made up of different shades of happy, sad, angry, and so on. Like saying, hey, I'm fine with how I feel these things, but I don't want them to take charge of everything, so you can decide that you'll let go when things get tough yourself, feel those feelings, but also hold back like a tower that doesn't. If you set limits that are too high, you're as a maker, you are in charge of how. It's not about being tall to build a tower. Okay with how you feel, but also make sure they don't destroy everything. Stoicism teaches us that when we finding balance is like building a strong tower that can stand up to the difficulties of the fifth. Think about what you feel. What could happen if you stay away? The fifth step in detaching requires a careful taking into account the possible. What happens when you distance yourself from a certain person? Stoicism shows us how to think ahead, looking at the long-term effects of how we act in the Stoic context. This fits with the idea of prue, or pay attention to the present moment. While Stoicism stresses how important it is to the present, it also tells us to think about what our could mean for the future. Choices made by Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic Roman emperor, showed this in his thoughts. It's not that we have only a short time to live, but we waste it. A lot of it thinks about the what will happen if you distance yourself, grow as a person, and emotionally well-being, or could it lead to a loss? Those things could have been avoided. Stoicism tells us to think about the possible advantages of using logic in tracks and character to the way we make decisions. Picture yourself going through a forest, and there are various paths to Stoicism. Tells you that when perhaps you should think about leaving someone. It's like going over which trail to Stoicism says to follow in the forest. When you plan ahead, like when you think about choose to move farther away in a game yourself from someone else, is a bit like choose a forest path that you like, to think about where it could lead. The Stoics believed that planning ahead helps us make decisions that lead to more useful results. Picture the person you're thinking about is at the start of the forest, and you're not sure if you should pick the same way or different one. Ask yourself, am I going to step away from this person? What could go wrong? It's like taking the different paths and figuring out where each one is. Might make us learn Stoicism that getting ready ahead of time is like having a map in the forest, makes you smarter picks. So before you choose to distance, think about the following for a moment. What could happen? It's not about guessing what will happen, but more like being an interesting explorer in the forest of life. 6. Take a break because of social media. The popularity of in today's world. Social media has brought new problems to keeping for your mental health. Stoicism with its classical knowledge, gives us insight into taking care of our bond with digital platforms and the steady flow of facts in the sixth step of detachment. Stoicism tells us we need to take a break from social media. The Stoics were wise people who lived in a very different world from ours, still had to deal with external outside factors that could make their inner peace. Seneca wrote about in his article on the life was too short, mourn the things that got in the way of living a good life. We have lived, it's not that we have a short, we waste a lot of our time. It used this Stoic understanding to look at the digital world is always full of compare and get knowledge on social. The media can take our minds off of what? How important is the story? IIC practice of apatha becomes especially important here by temporarily cutting off from social media. We make room for introspection, lowering the outside things that might make you feel upset. Tension Seneca's advice to pay attention to what's important really hits home in this part of detachment is about imagining society. The news is like a big puzzle, and it can be a little too much, like trying to put together a puzzle with too many pieces, because Stoicism says it's okay to taking a break from this online game, to relax your mind in simple ways. In other words, it's like putting the puzzle down, pieces for a while so you can bring a new one back. Thought Stoicism tells us that our minds, we need breaks just like our bodies do. Get some rest. Social media can be like a stream of puzzle pieces changes the scenes and news, and it can be a bit too much. About the Stoic thinkers think that taking a break from this digital game can help us remember thoughts clear and focused. Think about media like a puzzle you're putting together. When things start to feel too much, there's no reason not to take a break. Putting the puzzle away for a while and could be going about something else, taking a walk while reading a book, or just taking it easy without computers for a while, even though Stoicism says that by giving your brain a break, you make sure it doesn't get too full of. It's about taking many puzzle pieces, being in charge of your internet time, just like pick a time to play with a game, and remember when to take a break from it. It's not about giving up social media. Always. It's about making sure it doesn't get too smart. Seventh bending task, pay attention to what you need. The last step in separating from situations and people. Based on the practical book has a plan. Bring our attention to one's needs, Stoicism, with the focus on being self-sufficient and inner strength fits in perfectly with. This idea made Epictetus a Stoic intellectual who was born into slavery, stressed how important it is of seeing the difference between what's inside, it's in our power, and what's not. Seventh step Stoicism tells us to pay attention to what we don't need in the sense of things, but in terms of think about mental health and virtue. The Stoic habit of volunteering people are in pain where on purpose they subject themselves to putting together tough situations. Using this concept to focus on resilience on the most basic needs for emotions. The Stoics had moral integrity and were stable. As the saying goes, virtue is the only good. That real happiness comes from making sure our acts are moral greatness. Of Epictetus, in his Ideon, summed up this Stoic concept very well. A clear mind is the first step to happiness and freedom. Understanding of one idea. Some things are under our control. Pay attention to what is instead of what isn't. Our thoughts and deeds are under our control, and deeds we give ourselves the power to handle events and relationships. Think about what life is like as a Stoic. There's a spread with lots of different things. There were some good and some bad things on the table. Stoicism says that when you feel down, figure out what to put on your plate. It's smart to think about what you need. The same way you pick out your snacks, being silent is all about being smart. Making decisions in life is a lot like picking what the conservative liked best from the buffet. Philosophers think that what we need isn't always what we want. So if you want to pick the snacks that are not just the ones that are good for you, taste great right now. There are many things to choose from in life, like doing things and going places with friends, set out instead of getting everything. Socrates says it's okay to choose the things that make you happy, and full, long-term happiness is like telling them, I'll pick the things that are good for my mind and heart. Think about what you really need for it's good for your mental health and growth. Choose the snacks that make you, not only those who are. For a moment, Stoicism tastes good. If we pay attention to what we really need, our lives are being tossed around a lot more rewarding in the long run in the journey of coming apart from other people and. When Stoicism's lessons are needed, provide deep thoughts and useful help by taking a short break, thinking about the logic of separating and taking part in open, setting limits for conversation, our thoughts as we think about what might happen, taking breaks from outside forces to use social media and pay attention to our acts are in line with our basic needs. Stoicism, with its Stoic values, a timeless piece of wisdom, tells us that apathy is not the same thing as detachment, but about getting to a state of inner calm and strength as we get around the complicated human things that matter in relationships and in life. The Stoic ideals show the way, of ideas that help us live a better life of virtue, wisdom, and feeling well-being, in the words of Seneca. To be happy, you have to enjoy the time, without worrying about being dependent on the future. Thanks for watching and see you in next video. Bye.